It's no secret that The Legend of Zelda gets a lot of love here at Pop Fiction, but it's hard to stay away from the series for too long when it contains so many wonderful mysteries and myths. Thanks to a devoted fan base continually unearthing new findings, there's no shortage of curiosities to cover when it comes to Zelda. This time, we're going back to the past to the game we covered in the very first episode of Pop Fiction, A Link to the Past. In the 1990s, the internet was finally being widely used by the public. Gamers had access to more information than ever and a new means to communicate with other fans. While this was largely considered a blessing, it also had some negative side effects. The spread of false information and rumors were prevalent, and many of the most popular gaming myths were conceived during this decade. One of them is a lesser-known tale to newer gamers, but nonetheless was a big deal at the time. In A Link to the Past, there's a region known as the Swamp of Evil in the Dark World, which is usually mislabeled as Mire, the name of the 6th dungeon located there. The environment is a gloomy swamp hammered by a torrential downpour and inhabited by weird monsters. Eventually, the weather would clear up after using the Ether Medallion, but there was still one subject that remained murky. Apparently, players could encounter an invisible enemy in the marshes, prompting reports to appear on internet message boards. The elusive fiend eventually became known as the Ghost of Mire, spurring all sorts of crazy theories and speculation as to its origin. Over the years, the Ghost of Mire has fallen into obscurity, but we felt now is as good a time as any to go on a ghost hunt to see if we could catch a glimpse of this pesky specter. Typically, the instructions we come across for testing out myths are ridiculously insane, but this time, the steps outlined on most sites are rather straightforward. You simply need to progress far enough in A Link to the Past until you can access the Swamp of Evil in the Dark World. It's then recommended that you use the Ether Medallion to clear away the storm to make it easier to see things, but it's not necessary. Once you're set, proceed to the southern part of the map, just east of where you should have entered the region via the warp tile from the Light World. You need to move over to around the spot you see on the screen and use the Bombos Medallion. You should then see an invisible enemy catch on fire. That enemy, allegedly, is the invisible fiend known as the Ghost of Mire. After venturing into the Dark World and saving a few crystal-enshrined maidens, we were finally set to travel to the Swamp of Evil. First, we returned to the Light World, where we used our flute to summon our trusty bird companion and flew over to location 6 on the map. Using the strength of the Titan's Mitt, we lifted the black stone on the right to reveal a warp tile that transported us to the gloomy swamp. We made our way over to the designated area on the southern part of the map, and then let loose the full fury of the Bombos Medallion. A single invisible object burst into flames, leaving behind some bombs after its grisly death. So the stories of an invisible enemy were true after all, but we still had some questions. Just what the heck was this enemy, and why was it invisible? There obviously had to be more to the story. During our search for information regarding the Ghost of Mire, we came across a guide on GameFAQs written by a user named Thole. It outlined the instructions for reaching the enemy, but it also had some findings regarding the subject. For starters, you can hit the foe with other items, which sometimes produces odd effects. For example, if you use the hook shot to hit the ghost, and then try to use the Pegasus boots, the sound effect played during your dash would be the same as the one you heard while the hook shot was extending. Another odd glitch occurs when using the Cane of Samaria. If you use it to hit the ghost and then repeatedly use the item quickly, you'll notice your magic meter will start acting odd, and it eventually glitches out. What was more intriguing was the fact that there is actually more than one invisible ghost. Thole states in the guide that he was contacted by a user named Nicholas Harvey, who came across 2 more ghosts located just northeast of the original one. These 2 other ghosts shared the same exact traits as the first, though we were no closer to figuring out just what exactly these creatures were. Naturally, fans had their own theories. The most common conclusion was that the enemy was the product of a glitch, given that the ghost itself produced various glitches when using certain items like the hookshot. Perhaps the programmers forgot to include the sprites for this new type of enemy, or rather, the enemy was cut from the final version, but the developers forgot to remove the code for the enemy in that location. Others thought it might be a normal enemy that wasn't properly coded, like the Mudman enemy called Geldman from the Light World desert area, which was geographically in the same position as the Swamp of Evil in the Dark World. Since this was a Light World enemy, some thought that maybe the monster wouldn't show up correctly in the Dark World environment. And for a long time, the leading theory believed the enemy was simply an invisible incarnation of the swamp's worm monster, the Swamola. As reasonable as some of these explanations sounded, the truth would come years later thanks to the advances in emulation and ROM hacking tools. In the early 2000s, a ROM editor named Hyrule Magic was released, allowing fans to delve further in the inner workings of A Link to the Past. You could load up the overworld map data for any region, including the Swamp of Evil, allowing you to see what was present in the game's code. This finding was first documented by a GameFAQs user named ETG. When loading up the Swamp of Evil, you can see a listing of the enemies and their placement. In the 3 spots where the ghosts were roughly located are enemies known as Fireball Zoras, more formally known as a Ku. They share similar traits to their Light World counterparts, the River Zora, and that they live in deep water areas. You might notice that in the Light World there are Zoras that appear in shallow water, as well as deep water in Zora's domain. There appears to actually be 2 unique types of Zora enemies, one type that's meant to appear in shallow water, and one only meant to appear in deep water. It's likely that the Ku in the Swamp of Evil are deep water monsters that start submerged below the water, then surface to shoot a fireball, and finally return below the waves. What's special about these 3 Ku is that their starting placement on the map is in shallow water, while the others that appear normally are in deep water. This is most likely why the 3 enemies appear to be glitches, giving them abnormal traits like being invisible. It's possible that at one point these aquatic fiends were meant to be an equivalent of the shallow water Zora, or maybe the spot where they were placed originally had different geography. Though it isn't quite a statement from the development team, the evidence overwhelmingly supports the claim that the Ghost of Misery Mire is simply the result of a glitch caused by the wrong placement of an enemy on the map. You never know when a strange glitch might end up leading to a bizarre tale like this one. Perhaps the ghost will pop up once again in the upcoming sequel to the classic SNES game, A Link Between Worlds.